Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Outstanding. So, welcome in and thanks for stopping in. This session is on building an AI cognitive assistant. And I have a couple of slides. I don't, by nature, really like PowerPoint, so we're going to technology soon. Most of this is self-paced, so you'll be doing, if you, by the way, if you have your links to this particular conference, there was pre-work. There is a, if you go to those links, there is a student guide and some other files. If you don't get to those, let me know. I have, for this particular hands-on session, you're going to need a CSV file, a JSON file. Those are in that, should be in those prep files, along with the student guide. And it would not have been up there when you did your pre-work before yesterday, so that was my fault. And the pre-work was really, had one flaw in it with respect to Slack, and all I really needed you to do is really kind of create your cloud account so you had it, and you could go through most of the steps in the existing demo and then create your own assistant. So without further ado, we're going to talk a little bit about AI, talk about a virtual assistant, what that means, and then talk about use cases and benefits, and then dive into the technology. So, artificial intelligence. What is AI? Can anybody tell me what AI is?
A robot that does everything for you.
Okay. What's the key thing about AI?
It knows what to do.
Why is it? What is it about that robot that it knows what to do? Right, because it thinks on its own, right? There are aspects of that machine that have human cognitive ability, right? That it can understand and interpret sight, visually, auditorially, it can hear things, right? It can understand sound, it can actually communicate, right? It can have an understanding of language, so there's conversational aspects there. But really, what AI is defined is the theory of the development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, translation between language. So, I will admit to you that this word is starting to become heavily used, right? Oh wow. This is AI, this has got AI, this has got AI, this has AI. It's almost like becoming ketchup. You put it's AI and everything. And while that is the goal, to make our lives better, we certainly want to understand what that means. And we don't want to overweight what this is, because there is a certain thing called augmented intelligence, right? Which is, the key difference between the two is the artificial intelligence actually has the cognitive understanding to replace the human role, and the augmented intelligence is meant to assist the human role. So IBM's Watson platform has all of services and offerings that are they kind of fall in both buckets. And so I tell you this because I was in actually in a industry analyst dinner a couple months ago in Dallas, and one of the customers that they had invited to their dinner kind of raised his hand and said, "There's no such thing as AI." And I kind of opened my ears quite even more, and I said I was really trying to understand where his point was. What really was, people are coming to me, because he was an executive vice president, he said, people are coming to me trying to, push AI, and they're really not understanding and conveying to me, how this really is a differentiator, because we still have to put work into the system that mimics the decision, or that just kind of takes the place of the human. And I said that's true. That there are inputs that are necessary, like in many cases models are necessary to deploy inside an AI ecosystem or an AI service, so that domain expertise can be understood and extended. But I also asked him if he had ever heard of IBM Debater, and he had not. I said, well, this is an AI ecosystem that is very much a next generation AI system, where it truly is using reasoning to actually argue a point, and it's a complete closed system. So, if you, in your free time, would like to check it out, go to YouTube, type in IBM Debater. It's a fantastic offering, and we're just, another trying to make, that next level of maturity in AI. But what we're going to talk about today is one of the core pieces of that system, and frankly, also of the Jeopardy system, is a conversational assistant. And what we call it is Watson Assistant. And a lot of companies, and frankly, they probably are appropriately named, but they call it chatbots. And Assistant is really not just a chatbot, because a chatbot is fairly shallow. And what it does, Assistant is fairly robust. It has the ability to respond omni-channel. So whether it's SMS or voice or email or whatever, it uses cognitive capabilities that are now called skills. It used to be called something else, but what we've now done is made Watson Assistant more flexible. So you'll see that in what you work with today. But these skills are specific to either interfacing with another system, or doing some sort of specific task, and you marry those skills into a single virtual assistant. And the skills can also, be domain specific. So if you really think about it, if you want a true omni-channel assistant, you can have an HR skill, right? You can have a finance skill. You can, all the different departments that, a customer service skill. All those things kind of come into the same assistant framework, and you can have a true single point of entry. Search is another skill, but it is something that Assistant does, and allows really the enrichment of a conversation with context. And then you have the agent, which interacts typically either fed by the assistant, or is augmented by the assistant by taking some of the simple things. So in really a common process, we'll have a cognitive assistant deployed to help take care of some of that low-hanging fruit, those frequently asked questions, those things that people call because they really can't find it on the website, or really don't want to, read through all the FAQs. That's kind of like always usually a first phase, and that voice interaction of Watson to say, let me, change your password for you, or let me help you change your PIN, or let me replace your card, or because of fraud or whatever. Those frequently interaction, it helps deflect all this volume, thus allowing the agent to get to more productive things, which is leading me into kind of one of the key benefits. If you look at where assistants are deployed, they usually service some sort of channel, whether it be from the website or from a contact center, and other organizations. We have a bank in the Eastern Seaboard that actually deployed Assistant internally to help drive skills maturity in their own organization. They didn't want to have churn or really, didn't want to force people out the organization. They want to completely invest in those employees, and so to help drive the skills that they didn't have at the time to the skills that they needed them to have as that bank transformed into a more digital bank, they used Assistant to be kind of an HR buddy and drive, and it has shown to be very effective. But nonetheless, it is a machine that usually helps and is available 24/7. You can look at cost takeout and through self-service. Really, it's one of the most common use cases, and that, like I said, that doesn't have to be external; it can also be internal. And then next best action suggestions. Here are the key use cases. So customer care, Watson Assistant can decrease, these operating costs. We have Royal Bank of Scotland, Autodesk, Lloyds, Sprint, Vodafone, Honda. These are customers that are currently using this technology to really, like I said, take cost out of their main contact center, increase productivity, allow people who have knowledge to have access to more knowledge, and being able to put a conversational interface to your entire organization's content allows someone who is an expert to become more of an expert, because then they can find things easier and get at the data that they need to use quicker. And then commerce, this is more the suggestive sell. Okay, so questions?
What I'm showing you now,
So what I'm showing you now is the pre-work page. So this is really from the your conference website. This is where the pre-work is. Okay. And the actual pre-work itself is just, this is walking you through how to build, get your IBM Cloud account. And this is only so you can provision a free plus service of your Watson Assistant. So what you'll do is, well, I'll do this with you. Hang on a second. So you want to go to IBM Cloud, or cloud.ibm.com, and you want to do a okay, so here it is in my system. What all I've done is in the catalog type Watson Assistant, and then clicked on Watson Assistant when it came back in the list, and then what you can see here is there's a free plus trial. That's what you want to have your account set at. The reason for that is because the plus includes a feature that is that contains a skill that's necessary for you to kind of see the full extent of the lab. So once you've created, and really this is just creating your own instance. Click create, give it a 30 seconds, and it should spin up. And the next thing was really walking through a demonstration system. Second. Okay. Okay. So, ignore this Slack piece. Just make sure you've got your Watson Assistant provision. Once you do that, then the next link is your hands-on lab files. That opens up this box link here, and there is a, let me show you this with the pointer. So the student guide here, this PDF, is what you want to download. You'll also want to download the CSV file and the JSON file, because those are part of the lab that you'll actually bring into your own assistant. Anybody have any questions? One of the things that the conversation interface does real well is understand context. There are things called slots that are basically a feature where you can identify certain elements that are necessary before completing a certain task. So, let me demonstrate. So here I'm going and logging on to my bank's website. Now I could, keep in mind the current state of this, I could get on the phone, call the contact center, and sit on hold, and or go through some sort of IVR hitting, 4, 3, 5, or like my wife does, as soon as they answer, 0, 0, 0, 0, until somebody answers. Or I can have this experience. So I'm logging in on my bank website, and where do we want to go today? How about Rome? Okay. So what I can do is say, I am going to Rome. So first thing it does is say, okay, when do you leave? Well, let's have me leave next week. Even though that's when school starts, I'm sure that's fine. So what it already did is put an alert on my account that I am traveling. And it also said where I'm traveling. Now it wants to confirm my contact information should there be any activity that it needs to report. Right? So how fast was that? That was seconds. And what type of experience did I have? Right? I mean, all I did was say, I'm going. Next week, it's done. AI technology can make customer experience much, much higher. And so the lab that you're going through right now is really walking you through, first, a working example of this, and then second of all, building some of the things behind the scenes. What's important to take away from this is, number one, to know that this IBM technology is very easy to use and quick to deploy. Number two, it's very robust and has a lot of capabilities that differentiate it from competitors. So when you look at a bake-off or some sort of competitive situation, and I don't care if you're selling into an account or if you're in the account evaluating what to buy. This should help you understand what's important, right? Because ultimately, you want the implementation to be efficient and quick. Number two, you want the technology to be robust and scalable. And That's what we're trying to convey here. Any questions? Anybody getting stuck on anything? Okay. In about 10 minutes, we'll do a little bit of break. I see everybody kind of getting up as you need. That's fine. This is kind of at your own pace. But we'll do an official break in about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll start stepping through the technology. Okay. What I'm going to do now is do a demonstration which hopefully will sound familiar because you've been working on something very close to the same workspace. And as soon as I do this demonstration, which is it's going to be quick, what I wanted to do is highlight a couple of things. IBM has an offering on our cloud called Voice Agent. Voice Agent is the interface to a organization's telephony. And it's a cloud service that is very easy to configure. So I personally have like a Twilio number that I use to do this, and basically I use my Twilio configurations and point it to the IBM Voice Agent on the cloud. And so when I call this voice agent, or sorry, when I call my Twilio number, which by the way could be a contact center number or whatever, it routes to the voice agent service on the cloud, which then orchestrates Watson Assistant, speech to text, text to speech, all in concert to help address the things that you're doing on your laptop through voice. So I'm going to demonstrate how we can do this through a voice channel.
Hi there. Welcome to the ABC Bank Voice Agent demo. How may I help you today?
What can you do for me?
I can help you with many types of commonly asked questions related to ABC banking services, including requesting a new card, reporting fraud on your account, creating a travel alert, finding our locations or hours, or changing your phone number.
I'd like to set up a travel alert.
Do you want to set up a travel alert?
Yes.
Okay, I will help you set up a travel alert. I just need a few pieces of information from you about your trip.
I'm traveling to France tomorrow.
Are you traveling international or domestic?
International.
When are you returning?
I'm coming back in a week.
Your account has been set up for a travel alert for Thursday, August 8th, 2019 to Wednesday, August 14th, 2019 while traveling to France. Thank you.
So very easily I can use a voice channel to interact with an assistant, and again, I reiterate, I don't have to wait on hold, I don't have to hit a whole bunch of buttons to get routed to the right area. It's a very efficient, quick exchange, and that's what this is meant to be. So while this system's not trying to pretend to be a human, it is helping displace a lot of the human requirements, because if you were to actually talk to an agent, you would need to tell them, okay, where are you going? How long are you going to be gone? And then they would have to, manually enter into their system. Well, Watson can do that for you. So let's get into some of this technology. I think this is going to be a very helpful exchange. Hopefully you can walk away from this, this experience with some, at least some understanding, number one, of what is AI, where can it be applied, and what is, what are some use cases, and again, whether you're in the organization that is evaluating these capabilities, or you're working for a company that is trying to offer these capabilities. Hopefully this can give you some context in a way that you can see how to separate some of the more simpler offerings from something a little bit more complex. So give me a second here, let me open up the workspace and we can get where you're at. So has anybody had issues uploading files? We had one issue where the file, the CSV file was kind of spinning. All you needed to do was actually hit refresh on the browser and it would fix the issue. Okay, yeah, let's do that. So one of the intents has mapped, can I change my address? Now, look what happened. What it has here is the intent account management update change, so it found it correctly. And there are, triggers that can occur once it's mapped the intent. So let's say, for example, if can I change my address, it will determine what elements are necessary for it to proceed forward. This is the slots issue, or the slots configuration, which kind of says, hey, before you do anything for this type of scenario, you need these information. We did it when we first came out with this. The slots feature. We had a really kind of silly hands-on lab around ordering a pizza, and it was fantastic to illustrate how, when you really think about it, people could call a pizza parlor and say, hey, I want a large pie, meat lovers, delivered as soon as possible, right? So a person can call or establish, several pieces of information in their initial request, and what Assistant can do is pull from that each of the things that are necessary, and then at the same time determine, okay, what am I missing, right? And in the pizza example, it said, would you like any beverages, and what's your delivery address, and a callback phone number. So, if I called up and said I wanted a pizza, it would walk me through what size, what do you want on it, and it was a good illustration of how this works. Now, obviously that's a very simplistic example, but in real world life, like the travel alert, and other examples in business that actually have correlated contexts that are necessary, this is a powerful thing. And that's why we kind of just look at Assistant as, slightly better than the average bear, right? It's a more robust platform than some of the competition out there. So what I meant to also highlight in this point is let's say, let me pick something that has a little bit more generic pieces to it, maybe a little less. Oh. So in this intent payments, We have trained it to understand these range of nuanced utterances. And again, this is a natural language assessment of when somebody verbally speaks this or types in some of this information, it will understand that. Now, if I were to say, hey, Bill. So it's fairly trained. I'm trying to trick it up actually too. What can happen is that if, and this has happened in many clients, is if we find something where the confidence level, the score of this mapping is not confident, we'll have a cutoff level that says, okay, we will help the person by gathering another information, like say, can you rephrase, and that's where the dialogue comes in, I'll show you in a second, but can you rephrase this, can you help me understand a little bit more, and what we'll do is we'll capture that utterance, and that goes to an actual aggregation report that can be reviewed by a subject matter expert so that they can properly say, okay, this is actually this intent, this actually means this actually means that, and it feeds back into the model, and then the model retrains. So as you have deployed this virtual assistant to expand its domain of expertise, it's fairly simple. It's just a matter of training the neural net model behind it to understand the language elements that map to your new intent. Same thing with entities. So the other piece of the assistant is, or at least the conversation, is entities. What are we talking about? So we're talking about either account elements, a card, some sort of payment, and entities are important when we want to, and you'll see in your lab, but entities are important when we want to direct our intent. And so this often helps couple a particular trigger in automated this orchestration process to get basically create that closed loop. So I understand you want to do something, but what does that something apply to? Like, I want to close an account. Okay, which account? I want to close my charge card. Dialogue. So dialogue is something that I think is really where the magic happens. And hopefully you'll have observed in your lab the flow of the dialogue. One of the things that dialogue does is it actually kind of is a flow diagram. If you look at it, goes to the top and then determines based on intent and or entity where the response should be. So granted, this is a demonstration, so there's probably some simplistic things in there. And let's look at our travel. One of the things that this system also does is have stateful variables. So while a conversation can be relatively stateless, there are things that, at least in a transaction sense, require state. So you can automatically create state variables like the card information. For example, when I called the voice agent and said, I'm going to France, right? So it will capture that that entity and store it as a state variable so that for that conversation, it can reference it anytime. This is one of the key things in the soft handoff. So we have worked with our clients who try to have a metric, a KPI called containment. Containment is where someone starts in a particular channel and then stays in that channel to resolve their entire quest, and then they're done. Where you have a bad containment is where somebody starts with maybe a chat and then says, this isn't helping me, and it goes to a live agent. That detracts from your containment score. We have customers that have as high as an 85% containment score on some fairly wide range of services, as well as age groups. And I say that last point because I've gotten questions in previous classes and previous meetups where folks say, well, okay, I get it. Some of the millennial generation, takes probably preference to technology to interact, but maybe the boomers really just can't get their head around it, and so they're going to zero out regardless. Well, actually, what we've seen is that the older generation does actually adopt this if it's a pleasant and efficient experience. If it's not complex and very difficult to interact with. So if there is if there is a need for an escalation, we can use these stateful variables in this conversation to hand off to a live agent and feed that live agent screen with every piece of information that they need so that they're not taking this customer, because in most escalation situations, we're handing off because we've either scored this particular customer as a potential for churn because they've said something that maybe lends them to fall into a risky basket. We want to make sure we handhold and really kind of surround them with some support so that we try to prevent that churn if possible. And one of the key things is to make sure that when they get on the phone, they're not having to reiterate anything that they've already said. So stateful variables. The dialogue itself, again, is somewhat of a flow, a flow chart. And if you look at, like, for example, here's the flow. So we start with a welcome, and then what the system does is it evaluates based on the first statement from the caller to identify, okay, what are we going to do? What do we need to do? Are we going to be talking about accounts? Are we doing payments? Are we doing travel? We can also, through our cloud service, as well as we also have an on-prem offering called Cloud Pack. All these services are available through Cloud Pack. Enable SMS. So, for example, if you're interacting with a customer and one of the use cases I've done in a previous POC, or actually a demonstration, was a PIN number. So we authenticated the person through a password, but the customer wanted two-factor authentication. Well, this was a perfect opportunity for us to use SMS. So while we were on the phone with them, we sent that person an SMS text to the phone number we had on file, and they read that PIN number that we sent them, and that was the two-factor authentication. So this is a fairly capable, service-rich, and robust ecosystem to interact and handle things that really humans have traditionally handled, but it can do it at a much lower cost. Anybody have any questions so far? I'm kind of walking through Assistant, some of the features, some of the things that you're working with on the lab. Again, you know, this is a very easy system to configure, and once you have it configured and operational to deploy it into production, it's just a matter of your normal companies or your normal customers deployment cycle, testing requirements and so forth. But it is, after all, an API. So there's not a lot of, you know, usually our clients wrap this in their own UI, which that ABC Bank that you first were introduced with in the lab is an example UI of how we've embedded Watson Assistant. All right. Any questions? So we have roughly about 30 minutes left in this second session. Does anybody have anything they'd like to go over, any problems or challenges they've had with the lab? I can work with you one-on-one. Otherwise, I'll give you some more time and just let me know if you have any questions. All right, so we have come to our time, and I want to just kind of close with a couple of things. So hopefully today you were able to go through this and find some value in what you were doing. It wasn't a waste of time. It was also something that you can walk away with and have a better understanding of what. I hope you can sit in a conversation, and if somebody says and starts talking about AI and starts throwing these things around, you can kind of pick up on that conversation and go, yes, and here's some other things you need to think about, right? I'm trying to and hoping to equip you better to evaluate this technology, as well as to understand how easy it is to use from an IBM perspective, and how robust it is, and really give you as much of a prepared toolbox as you can. Anybody have any comments or questions? Well, I certainly appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming in and sitting in through this, and I wish you all the best of luck. Enjoy your conference, and take care.